On today's episode of Locked On Angels, the Halos split the series against the Tampa Bay Rays, a series that they could have easily won. We're going to recap yesterday's early game, look at what went right and what went wrong. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to give back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube, leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And today's episode is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB. Use our promo code LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. What's up, everybody? This is Locked On Angels, and my name is Mike Frisch, one half of the Super Halo Bros. And we're so glad that you made Locked On Angels your first listen today. My brother John is normally here. He is still not feeling well, and so we're going to put him on the 3-day IL, and then we're going to test him out maybe Sunday night, see if he's ready to go for Monday, but I'm sure he'll be back. Not feeling great, but he sends his angel love to you. Thanks for being here and hanging out with me. This is our third season at Locked On Angels. Excited to be here. We're here 5 days a week. And on today's show, we're going to talk about the Reds series. The Angels are playing the Reds this weekend in Cincinnati. We're also going to talk about Robert Stephenson. That injury is devastating. The Angels are kind of being a bit interesting about what they're talking about, similar to what they did with Shohei last year. He's having surgery, but they're not really saying what kind of surgery. We're going to talk about Robert Stephenson, that injury, how it impacted his contract, but also how it impacts the bullpen and the Angels organization overall. But let's get into yesterday's game against the Tampa Bay Rays. The Angels lose that game 2-1. I think every game was a 1-run deficit or a 1-run victory, except for that first game when the Angels got out to a big start. And it was just a back and forth series. You remember when the Angels would play the Oakland A's early 2000s, and it was just a back and forth, always a 1-run victory or a 1-run loss? That's what this series really felt like. Gosh, if we could go back to being good like we were in the 2000s, maybe the A's as well, that'd be a lot of fun, but that's a whole other episode. Good news is Griffin Canning was on the mound and had a much better start than his previous starts this season. 5 1/3, 4 hits, 2 runs, 2 earned runs, just 1 walk and 4 Ks through 84 pitches. He did allow 2 runs in the first inning, and that was a bit of an issue for him all season long so far. He walked one of the hitters, and then he gave up a triple to Ahmad Rosario. Rosario hit a line drive to right field on a 94-mile-an-hour fastball that was off the outside corner, and then he scored on a sacrifice fly. Canning said that he was shaky in the first inning because he was a little tentative, and you could kind of see that when he first came out. Maybe a little nervous, hoping to get through the inning, and then once they started to get some hits on him, you could tell he was really frustrated with himself. The fastball that Rosario hit was supposed to be inside, and it wasn't inside, according to Canning. But he said that he felt good after that first inning. He didn't allow anything else after that, at least when it comes to runs scored. He did give up just 3 more singles in the game and didn't walk anybody. So after that first inning, he kind of collected himself and had a pretty good outing. According to Canning, he said everything felt a lot better today. There's a couple of mechanical tweaks that I made just to help my timing out, help my rhythm out. His velo is back. I noticed that. He was down 2 miles an hour on every one of his pitches the last few starts. But this game, his velo was back, and it sounds like maybe it was because of that mechanical tweak that he worked on and was hitting 94 miles an hour in the first 4 innings. His numbers did dip as he got deeper into the game. When he got into the 5th inning, those numbers started to go back down to about 92 miles an hour on that fastball. And yet the Rays didn't pick it up. They didn't hit him. He was really dominant and was locating his pitches later on in that game. So good to see Canning improve. So that's part of the good. He did say that he felt like he had more life on the ball in that game and felt pretty good. Wash felt the same way, but he did have a critique of Canning. He'd said that I'd love to see Griffin do better than 50% on first pitch strikes. And that's something that Barry Enright has been preaching to these guys, and we've talked about a lot on Locked On Angels. And Canning really struggles with that. And I was, full disclosure, I was at work yesterday, and since I'm the boss, we just put the game on. It was great. And so we had the game up, and immediately that first inning, Canning went 2-0 to the leadoff hitter, 2 balls, no strikes. And I turned over to one of our Locked On Everydayers that I work with. His name's Cope. And I just said, we're off to a terrible start again. And that's really been Griffin Canning's Achilles heel so far this season, is he's not throwing first pitch strikes. In fact, he's only hitting about 50%, according to Wash. But Wash said that he was pleased with how Canning worked his way back into counts. Here's the quote from Wash. He said, keeping the batters off balance, moving the ball up and down. He made pitches in situations when he had to, and that's pitching, and that's what he did today. Another good in this game was Michael Nelson Trout. He produced what baseball fans like to call the Ricky run, or the Ricky Henderson run. And now, if you're familiar with Ricky Henderson, Hall of Famer, played for the A's and the Yanks, played for the Angels at just like a blip on the radar, played for the Blue Jays. Ricky Henderson would get on base either most of the time with a walk, and then he would steal 2 bags. He'd steal second base, steal third base, and then somebody would hit him in. Sometimes he would just steal home, but most often somebody hit a ground ball or a sacrifice fly, and Ricky would score, and he would produce that run, which made him so great. Well, Mike Trout did that in the top of the 6th. He drew a walk, he stole second by a mile, and then he stole third by a mile. And it was like, who is this guy? I'm falling in love all over again, because Mike looks like the Mike that we really enjoyed watching previous to like 2021 and in the 2019, 2018 seasons and before that. And so to see him steal bags, 5 stolen bases, by the way, so far this year is most since 2019. And to see him steal bags this way and produce runs is great. Miguel Sano came up, hit a sacrifice fly, and Mike Trout scored. And that was the only Angel run. It was 2-1 at that point, which brings me to the not so good. Trouty was the only offense. And the only way that they could score is him pulling a Ricky Henderson, because the rest of the team really struggled against the Rays pitching staff, really struggled against their starter as well. And the Halos, they did have a 9th inning rally, but with 2 outs, Brandon Drury did ground out in that game. And I was hoping he could come through. He's been out for the last couple of games with a leg issue, but was back in, and I was hoping he could come through, but wasn't able to in that inning. Angels had only 3 plate appearances with runners in scoring position. And it seems to be the issue right now. It seems to be the struggle of this offense, runners in scoring position. So that was part of the ugly, or part of the bad in this game, the not so good. And there's another not so good. And I hate bringing this up, but I'm going to bring it up, and John's not here to stop me, so I'm going to talk about it again. I hate to pick on Joe Adell, because I love Joe Adell. I'm a fan of Joe Adell. I know many of you are as well. But it gets really frustrating when he just continues to make mental errors. And I've talked about him the last few days on this show, because he's made mental errors in the last few days, oversliding a bag, being in right field and almost running into Aaron Hicks as he's trying to camp under the ball, and he makes the catch. He's calling for it, and Joe Adell's coming to almost tackle him, it felt like. And so Joe Adell pinch runs in the 9th inning, and Rengifo singles to center, and Adell's fast, and he's second on this team in stolen bases, and he's fast. And so if he could have easily made it to third, it was the first to third wash kind of game that they want to play, but he missed second, and he was running, and you can tell that he missed second. And good on him. He was aware of it. So he immediately went down into a slide and got back up and stood on the bag. And it would have been terrible if that was the final out and the Angels lost the game on that play. But the truth is that it's those mental gaffes that really get in the way, and I think keep him out of the lineup. Now, grand scheme of things, it didn't matter because the Angels didn't score, but it just keeps happening to Joe Adell. Simple, silly mistakes. And here's the other issue that I have, and this is another no good from that game, is Aaron Hicks is just not good. He's just not playing well. He looks like the Aaron Hicks from the Yankees, not from the Orioles last year. And I think he's playing too much, to be honest with you. I think he's in the game way too much, in the starting lineup way too much. They didn't bring him in to be the starter, at least from all indications. I don't know about the insider conversation that Wash and GMPM are having, but reality is you didn't get this guy on a simple deal and bring him in to be your starter when you have a Joe Adell or when you have a Mickey Moniak. And speaking of Mickey Moniak, if I'm Wash, he's my regular right fielder. He's in there every day. And if I'm going to have somebody in there, if it's a lefty on the mound, then I'm going to bring in Joe Adell. And I'm going to have Aaron Hicks fill in for Taylor Ward and Mike Trout. I'd probably DH Trout a little bit more, but I have a feeling that Trout is like, no, I want to be out there. And Trout's defense has been spectacular. He's played really, really well. Looks like the Mike Trout of old. He's never really lost a step in the outfield. And so it's nice to have him out there. And I think he loves to play offense and defense. And so he's Mike Trout. You do what he says, right? But Aaron Hicks is not going to be my everyday right fielder. I'd have Mickey Moniak there for a few reasons. He's young. He was a former number 1 pick. And when the guy has consistent at bats, he can really produce. And then he can scuffle, and that's when you bring in a Joe Adell. And if Joe's not cutting it, then maybe an Aaron Hicks can be somebody that you bring in. But honestly, I'm having Mickey Moniak out there as often as I possibly can, because when he gets hot and gets consistent at bats, he's dangerous. And why not? Why not have him out there? Because he's going to be with your team a lot longer than Aaron Hicks is going to be with your team. I don't know if I'd DFA Aaron Hicks. I know that there's some people on X that were calling for that. Honestly, I don't think that you just get rid of a player like that. I think he's probably got some good clubhouse vibes. He's probably somebody that can pass along some good knowledge and wisdom to the other players. Plus, he's a switch hitter, and he plays outfield, and he plays a good defense. And so you can bring him out there to be a defensive replacement. It really feels like, to me, as an everydayer, as an Angel fan, longtime Angel fan, watching Ron Washington, it feels like Ron is really I think he's really trying to feel out these young guys. And he's allowing the veterans to play a bit more until he can kind of go, okay, so this is who Joe Adell is, or this is who Mickey Moniak is. And I get that. I mean, we're 19 games in, and so it's a small sample size. We're not like in June, right? But I think that I would make that switch sooner rather than later, perhaps even putting Moniak in the outfield starting in this Cincinnati series. Although what we've seen from Wash is that he will continue to run the same guys out there pretty often. Angels could have won this series 3-1. I mean, they had one of those games where Esteves blew, and then the back and forth 13-inning game, that could have been theirs. And today could have been theirs. They could have been the victors today if they just had a little bit more offense and came through. They had a couple of chances, small amounts of chances, but they had a chance in the 9th inning to tie the game at least. They've really struggled with stringing consecutive wins together. They've only done it once, 4 wins in a row. We know this, when they won against Baltimore after getting blown out the first 2 games, and then won against the Marlins. They got the Reds next, and the Reds are at 500. We're going to break down that series on Locked On Angels coming up. And thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Angels do play the Reds today at 3:40 Pacific time. Tyler Anderson is on the mound, and it's a good bounce back game for him because he didn't pitch well in his last start. And when I say didn't pitch well, it wasn't like his first 2 starts. This start was not what we had seen from Tyler Anderson before. But it wasn't I wouldn't say it was a bad start, but there were some Tyler Anderson 2023 vibes in that game that we don't want at all. So Tyler Anderson will be on the mound in Cincinnati for the Angels. And you can catch every pitch of the Angels' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Angels. And coming up on Locked On Angels, Wash is worried about the bullpen with the injury to Robert Stevenson, and he believes the solution to the problems in the bullpen is found with his starters. And we'll explain coming up on Locked On Angels. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL, and baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all in an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. So what are you waiting for, Locked On Everydayers? Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That way they know you came from our show, and make your first bet an automatic win. $150, win or lose. Can't beat that. And you can't beat that. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and your team is the Angels, and this is Locked On Angels. And we want to invite you to make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all of the screaming that you see on all the other sports shows, the talking heads yelling at each other, or if you're listening on the radio, man, it's annoying. Turn it off and go to Locked On Sports Today. They're bringing you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And speaking of your team every day, the Angels do play the Reds at 3:40 Pacific time, and you can catch every pitch of the Angels' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Angels. And friends, Ron Washington is a bit concerned. He's a bit concerned with the bullpen of the Angels. And it got worse with the injury of Robert Stevenson. He's going to miss the entire year. And Wash is like, we got to figure some things out now, boys, because we're losing a really great arm. And again, I mentioned at the top of the show, the Angels are kind of being interesting about this surgery. It sounds like maybe it might be a UCL, maybe some Tommy John in the arm, but the Angels aren't saying a word about it. They're just saying he's going to miss the year and he's going to have surgery. And so Sam Blum and Jeff Fletcher and Taylor Blake Ward and all of those guys have posted that that's the report, but they don't have any details. And so I find it fascinating that the Angels kind of play this. We're going to give you about 10% of what's happening, and we're going to keep 90% close to us. And not that it would change anything with, oh yeah, he's got to have, UCL surgery, Tommy John surgery, but it'd be nice to know what it is that he's going in for. That way we can kind of estimate what his time frame might be. And there's been a lot of talk about injuries, right? There's been a whole lot of talk. Spencer Strider's going to have surgery, but because of the way that doctors have improved this surgery, perhaps Stevenson can come back sooner rather than later, and we'll be able to see him at the beginning of 2025. Here's what's interesting about this injury with Stevenson. In his contract, they negotiated an option if he has arm surgery and he's out for, I believe the days were at least 130 days or 130 games, something along those lines, that the Angels now will get an option for Stevenson for 2027. So it's a 3-year deal, $33 million. But now the Angels have an option for a 4th year at $2.5 million. So if Stevenson recovers and returns to the form that he was last year with the Rays, he could be a cheap but impactful bullpen piece for the Angels in 2027. I know that feels like it's light years away from us, but it could be a benefit to the Angels when they get there. And so that's the one positive in all of this. The Angels don't have to pick up that option, but they do have that option if they wanted it. So ideally, Stevenson has 2 really fantastic years next year and the year after. And the Angels could say, hey, we're going to bring you back for this. But even if his years aren't that fantastic, he seems like a good bullpen arm. And if he's quality, I could see the Angels bringing it back, because it's hard to get a bullpen arm, a good quality bullpen arm, for $2.5 million, right? I think Luis Garcia signed for 4.1 or 4.6, something like that. And so I wouldn't say he's in Robert Stevenson category. It's not bad. I mean, he's had some bad moments, but he did good in yesterday's game. And so to see Stevenson on the team for that cost, I think would be great. So let me take you back to the bullpen for just a moment. Jeff Fletcher of the OC Register reported that Wash believes that they need some help in the pen, but not the help that you think that you would go and get if you were the GM or if you were in charge of this team. Wash said that the help can start from the starters. Currently, the Angels starters are averaging 4.9 innings per start heading into yesterday's game. That was 27th in the majors. Wash said, we'd like for them to take some of the load off of the relievers, because I don't think that we can keep this up. We're trying to put some pressure on our starters to try to go out there and pound the strike zone early. He talked about that with Griffin Canning only having a 50% strike one rate when he starts off the batter. And he said, so by the time that we're getting into the 6th, possibly the 7th inning, we have convenient pitches to get us deep in the game. And I love that. Convenient pitches where you're not having to use your best stuff all of the time. You can save it for appropriate time when you're trying to get people out, and maybe they're swinging at some of your secondary stuff, which is great. Here's the starters so far for the Angels. Sandoval hasn't finished 6 innings yet. Detmers has been their best starter, obviously. I love Detmer's day. But his longest outing was only 6 1/3, which is an improvement from what we saw last year. I get it, but it would be great if he could go a bit longer. Tyler Anderson is the only Angels starter to finish 7 innings. He's done it twice in his 3 starts. We're hopeful that today could be the 3rd start that he goes 7 innings. Canning hasn't gotten out of the 6th inning, and that was entering into Thursday's game, and he didn't get out of the 6th inning. He only went 5 1/3. And then Soriano has been a reliever, and we all know that. And he's still learning how to pitch, and he's learning how to go deep into games. Wash said that he was gassed after throwing 90 pitches in 5 innings on Tuesday, which, by the way, he finished that game strong. And if he was gassed, it was great to see him be courageous on the mound and really get out of the inning the way that he did. So one of the underlying issues has been that pitchers have not accomplished the team's goal of throwing more strikes. The Angels starters are ranking dead last in the majors in the percentage of first pitch strikes. And all of our everydayers said, amen, because we've all seen that, right? Wash said, all you can do is consistently talk about it. That's how he's hoping to correct this. Obviously, they're going to work on mechanics and all of those things, and Enright's going to instill some things. But Wash is like, I'm going to keep talking about it. I'm going to keep pounding it in their brain. At some point, he said, these guys are good professionals. They're going to figure it out. But I'm just going to keep pounding it in their brain and encouraging them to pound the strike zone, especially strike 1. Now, here's an interesting question. If the Halos remain around 500 for the season, do you think it'd be wise for them to go grab a bullpen arm or just run with their young guys? In my opinion, I think it would be kind of a waste to go and trade for a bullpen arm if they're around 500. Now, when I say around 500, I'm talking about like they're not anywhere close to the division lead or anywhere close to that 3rd wild card. If they're close to the division lead, and if the division is still kind of close like it is right now in like June, July, then I think that we probably need to have this conversation again as to what they would do. However, I think that they need a bullpen arm right now. Obviously, the starters need to go longer, but I think they need a bullpen arm right now. Problem is that if you look at the minor leagues, there really isn't anybody that stands out as, that's the guy, right? I mean, Ben Joyce's name comes up a lot, and I am a fan of Ben Joyce, but in 3 games with the Trash Pandas, he's pitched 3 innings, struck out 4. He's got a 6 ERA, 1 save. He's got a 2 whip, walks and hits per innings pitched. That's not good at all. And that's the problem with Ben Joyce, is that he just cannot control his pitches. There are some games where he's great, and there's some games where he's not, where he's been notorious to walk at least 2 or 3 guys in an inning and get his team into some trouble. That's not what we need at the major league level. It's not what we need on this roster, right? I want to see him develop. I think he needs to stay in the minor leagues. However, I just don't think that there's anybody else that really stands out besides Ben Joyce. So I'd love for you to comment below and maybe point out some names that if you were in Wash's position and in GMPM's position, is there anybody in the minor leagues that you would call up to give a shot, maybe perhaps to be in this bullpen this season? Locked On Angels is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America, and they're the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Here's how it works. You pick between 2 and 6 players and decide if that player is going to produce more than or less than the projected stat. So PrizePicks gives you the stat, and then you decide if it's going to be more or less than that. So simple. If you're a fantasy shark, it'll be great for you. If you're a fantasy terrible like I am, it'll be great for me and you. So you should download PrizePicks today. You can guess on all of the different stats. There's strikeouts and RBIs and first inning runs. And it's not just about baseball. There's NBA action, playoff action that will be in there as well. And you can win up to 100 times your money if you want to take a risk with PrizePicks. It also offers weekly promotions, special offers for the biggest moments in sports. And they have great payout, specifically through Apple Pay. Quick and easy deposits into your account for whatever sport you're betting on. So download the app today, enter our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. Join PrizePicks today. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Let's talk about the Cincinnati Reds, the Big Red Machine. They haven't been the Big Red Machine for a really long time, although they have a really good core of some young guys coming up. The Reds are entering this series today against the Angels at 9-9. We're 9-10, so we're about the same. They just got swept by the Mariners. And the Mariners' offense isn't great, but the Mariners' pitching is fantastic. So they got swept by the Mariners, but before that, they swept the White Sox. Now, White Sox are terrible. I think they have 2 to 3 wins right now. They're not great. And so that was an expected victory, an expected sweep for the Reds. But then they're coming off a sweep against the Mariners. They got swept by them. So the Angels and Reds are going to play, and they played 3 times last year. Reds won all 3 of those games. So on the mound will be Nick Lodolo. He is a lefty and was a young guy who debuted in 2022, and he's looked pretty sharp so far this season. 5 2/3 scoreless innings against the White Sox in his first outing. He had 10 strikeouts and a 5-0 win. He came up again in 2022, had a good rookie season, but only made 7 starts last year due to injury and was struggling. And he had a 6.29 ERA with a 1.75 whip in 34 1/3 innings. This is his first career start against the Angels. Elly De La Cruz is somebody that I think a lot of baseball fans are aware of. And Ellie's been good so far this season. Had a great season last year when they called him up. Big, tall, lanky shortstop, third baseman, infielder for the Reds. He has 5 home runs. He has 11 RBIs, and he's got a 956 OPS. And that dude, he can fly around the bases. So if he's getting a double, he's probably going to stretch it to a triple. If he's hitting a single, he's probably going to stretch it to a double. If he's getting on base, he's probably going to steal the bag. We'll talk about that in just a minute. The Reds are scoring an average of 5.28 runs per game. So that's good for 7th overall in baseball. Their pitching staff has a 4.25 ERA. That's 19th overall in baseball. And in the series against the Seattle Mariners, the Reds offense was really scuffling, really struggling. They went silent. They only scored 5 runs while allowing 17 runs. And the Reds have dropped 3 of their last 4 series, similar to the Angels. So we find ourselves kind of in the same boat. So it could be suck versus suck, and one of us could not suck as much. And so hopefully it's the Angels that don't suck as much. Here's one thing that the Angels pitchers really need to be aware of, and that's the Reds on the base path. The Reds are averaging 2 steals per game. I mean, these guys are fast and they're ready. And our starting staff, at least last year, really struggled with holding runners. This year, they seem to be a bit better. I mentioned on yesterday's show that the Angels have 5 pickoffs so far this season. That leads Major League Baseball. They're going to have to really pay attention to these runners on the base. They're going to have to play clean defense, because any mistake letting any of these guys on base is going to cause some chaos. And on defense, if they make a mistake and there's a runner on, they're going to take the extra base, possibly take 2 extra bases. This is a team that is known for going first to third. This is a team that is known for stretching singles into doubles. So the Angels defense needs to be really aware, starting with Logan O'Hoppe and Matt Thaiss behind the plate. They need to be ready to hold runners, throw runners out. I think that they should utilize the pickoff move, but I also think that they should utilize the throw down to first base a few times from the catcher's position, just to let them know that we're aware of you and we're keeping an eye on you. But I think that's going to be something that Angel pitchers are going to have to be aware of and not allow that to get the best of them. Not allow that to really hurt them. I'm a bit concerned about Tyler Anderson on the mound today, because Tyler Anderson, with his hesitation, gives the runner a bit of an extra lead. Sometimes he won't have the hesitation, and he's good at deceiving the runner and deceiving the batter. I just don't want to see Tyler Anderson get so thrown off by runners at first base that he's throwing a lot of balls and walking a lot of guys, because as you and I both know, he's not successful when that happens. And so I really think that these pitchers got to be aware of that, but not lose focus on that guy at the plate, which is why I think O'Hoppe and Thaiss, whoever's behind the plate, needs to pay attention to that runner at first, throw a few darts down there just to let them know that we're paying attention to them. And I also think that a key to this weekend is that Ohapi needs to play in all 3 games. It's Logan Ohapi. He's tearing it up. I think you need his bat in the lineup all of the time. And I think you need his bat in the lineup at the 4th or 5th spot. I think that's where he needs to be. Put him in there. Let him knock in some runs because Rendon and Trout and Ward, one of those guys is almost a guarantee that they're going to get on base. By the way, Rendon almost hitting 400 since the standing ovation. Great job, everydayers, for standing up for him. And I also think that with Ohapi, he doesn't need to be at catcher for every game. I think he can DH one of those games and then have Theis in. Theis, I know it's a small sample size, small plate appearance, but I could see Theis coming through in a big way against the Reds. I could see him hitting maybe a couple of home runs in this game. I'd love to see him get hot. And he's not a bad bat. And if he can get a good pitch, I could see him really helping this team out. So I'm hopeful that this will be a good weekend for the Angels. The Reds are scuffling as they come in. The Angels are kind of treading water. And so it'd be great to be able to get 2 out of 3 and win this series. And the way that they're going to do that is if they pay attention to those runners on base and not let them just run wild, and they play good defense. Obviously, they need to hit with runners in scoring position, but the 2, I think, factors are the runners on base and playing good defense. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. The Angels do play those Reds today at 3:40 Pacific time, and you can catch every pitch of the Angels hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Angels. And you can follow us on Twitter at Locked On Angels and connect with John and I at Super Halo Bros and Locked On Angels on Twitter and Instagram. And Johnny is the one that is normally in charge of our social media. So if you saw that it was kind of dark the last couple of days, it's because John has been flat on his back and not feeling well, but he's starting to feel better. Again, he's going to be on the IL. We're going to test him out on Sunday, see how he's doing, and bring him back because Monday on Locked On Angels, we're going to recap all 3 of these games against the Reds, and we're hopeful that the Angels can come through. Reds are good. I think that they're a good team, but I do think the Angels, with some tweaks and with some guys coming through, maybe picking it up. Seems like Shawnuel's starting to get hot again. Neto hasn't really hit yet. To see him come through, I think the Angels, if they can get a bit more help on offense, help Trout, help Ward, even help Anthony Rendon, I think they can get a victory, at least 2, this weekend, and that would be awesome to talk about on Monday. So we're going to recap all 3 games on Monday on Locked On Angels. And thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. So glad to have you with me. Looking forward to seeing you on Monday on Locked On Angels.